Well, I'm going to have to admit I'm going to play against type here for a second. The last time I looked, it was 2-2. I'm not going to look while Frank is speaking. Directly. Today is a day for celebration and thanksgiving as we stand with Frank Schaefer, our Methodist sisters and brothers, as well as all people of faith, committed to the full inclusion of our LGBTQ sisters and brothers. We recall the words quoted by Martin Luther King Jr. that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. As people of faith grounded in the nonviolent love of the one called by 1,000 names, we all remain committed to giving voice and taking actions that will bring an end to the injustices in our world. We are grateful for the voice and actions of Frank Schaefer, who is committed to the prophetic ministry of honoring the inherent dignity of every human being. We rejoice that he has been called to share this prophetic ministry with us here in our communities on the Central Coast. All of our institutions are crippled by fear and prejudice, including ourselves. Yet we are all committed to following the one who calls and empowers each of us to share in building God's dream, where love wins. Let me, in closing, read a portion of Frank's statement following the affirmation of his reinstatement to full ministry by the Judicial Council of the United Methodist Church this past Monday. Frank wrote, "Their decision signals hope to our LGBTQ community, which has not always seen the rule of love and grace winning over the archaic law of the church that the church still subscribes to. Today's decision also signals a willingness to continue dialogue and to seek solutions that will hopefully lead to a change in these archaic and harmful policies. The United Methodist Church needs to find a way toward reconciliation and inclusion of our LGBTQ community and an open altar for all God's beloved children. I will continue the fight alongside thousands of others in the reconciling movement for full inclusion and an open altar for all. I know the day is coming when this dream will be reality, and I don't think it is that far in the future. Frank, welcome to Trinity Episcopal Church, to our communities, and thank you for your clear and faithful witness to peace and justice."
Thank you so much for your welcome and for those beautiful words. I don't even know where to start, but let me just say this. People always point out to me that they think that what I did was an act of courage. What I did was not really an act of courage. It was an act of love. It was because I have seen what the doctrine of the church has done to my son Tim when he came out to us. When he shared with us that he thought as a homosexual man he was going to hell. And how he struggled and cried himself to sleep most every night, praying to God, please take this away from me, make me normal. And when that didn't happen, he had a plan in place to take his own life, to end the pain. That's reality. Still to this day in our church and in many faith communities. And that's why I had to take a stand. That's why I did what I did. Because I know there are hundreds and thousands out there who are going through this and who are being spiritually abused by the doctrine of the church and by similar doctrines of other faith communities. I couldn't do anything else. It wasn't courage. It was the love for my son, and it was compassion for so many others that are going through this. Today is a great day, though. We are celebrating rightly so, because this Judicial Council decision is huge. And as we are looking at the statements that actually came out from the Judicial Council, we're discovering more and more nuances. And it really is a victory. Some people ask me, well, isn't this a very technical argument, though? And didn't they just, follow the line of the discipline? And I always say, yes, but they have not always done that. When it came to LGBTQ cases, justice was not always done. That is an absolute truth. And I experienced that myself, because on day one of my trial, back in November of last year, when it was all about finding guilt or innocence, I was not allowed by the judge to argue with one portion of our book of discipline over against another. I wanted to so badly point out, but there are other statements in our discipline, such as that all people are of sacred worth, and ministers, United Methodist ministers, are supposed to minister to every person regardless of their race, nationality, socioeconomic status, and sexual orientation. And I was not allowed to, because they told me, you're on trial, not the book of discipline. I was not allowed to produce any witnesses on day one except for myself. Now that is not justice. I never felt I had my day in court. But today I do, after this Judicial Council decision. It is a remarkable decision also because just 7 years ago, a colleague of mine, Beth Strout, an open lesbian minister in the United Methodist Church in a partnered relationship, went through the exact same process. She went through a trial, she got defrocked, she appealed it, she was reinstated by the Jurisdictional Committee on Appeals, just like I was, but then at the Judicial Council level she was defrocked once again. So this decision by the Judicial Council is huge. It speaks of a hope that we haven't seen. It speaks of a momentum shift that we have not seen in the United Methodist Church. And it's huge. Moreover, as we are learning these things coming out, there were actually 5 cases, besides mine, that had to do with LGBTQ rights before the Judicial Council. Now, in 2 other of them, they actually decided, because it was not directly against the Book of Discipline, they decided in favor for those as well. But here comes something remarkable. There were 3 cases before them. Each of them was about annual conferences. I'm talking about large Episcopal areas, annual conferences deciding at their annual conference that they would not ban gays and lesbians from becoming ministers. There were 3 conferences that did that, and those 3 cases were before them. You know what they did? They tabled them. They tabled these cases until the spring, and that tells you something, namely that there is a lot of pressure on our church. And you know why that is? Because they have learned in the last couple of years that there is so much support from within the United Methodist Church as well as outside of the church. They had no idea They had no idea how strong our movement is. And that's why they tabled these 3 cases. I'm sure that's why they made the decision in my case. And I thank God for that. And most of all, I thank God for all of you here tonight. To me, this means the world. This means everything. When I realized there were people from all faiths coming to the prayer vigil, that was only last week, wasn't it? Yes. Absolutely amazing. People from the Jewish community, like Rabbi Schaefer, even some people from the Muslim community came in, and they said they wanted to support me. We had politicians come out. We had an interfaith community, and we were all praying together for justice to be done. I'm beginning to think that prayer actually works. Yes. And not just any type of prayer, interfaith prayer. How great is that?
Amen.
When we all come together as brothers and sisters from across denominations, from across faiths, things can happen. Wonderful things can happen. Wonderful things happened after I was defrocked. Honestly, I'm sharing very honestly with you. When I was defrocked, I honestly thought or doubted that I would ever set foot into another church ever again. I was very disappointed, very sad, disillusioned about the church. And the things that happened in the days following my defrocking were just amazing. The way different churches reached out, different faiths reached out to me. My own church, the United Methodist Church, reached out to me. And I'm not talking about the hierarchy of the United Methodist Church. I'm talking about a movement, the reconciling movement in the United Methodist Church, reached out to me and said, "We don't agree. In our eyes, you're not defrocked." I've heard that so many times. You are still a reverend in our eyes, and we want you to come, and we want you to preach. And then universities and seminaries were reaching out to me. They said the same thing. We want you to speak to our students, and we want you to sit on panels and discuss this, because this is important stuff. And all of that because of my son, Tim, having the courage to share his story. And all of this because of the real heroes of the LGBTQ community, people that have everything to lose, so much more than just a job, to face the courage, to have the courage to face possible rejection by their parents, by their family, by their churches, by their schools, by their communities, and to stand strong and come out and say, I am gay, I am lesbian, I am bisexual, I am transgender, I am queer, I am who I am. I was created in the image of God, just like everybody else. Deal with it. Yes. I remember, and this is my favorite story, I have to share it tonight. I remember when I celebrated with a reconciling church in New York State, the Binghamton Church, church of Pastor Hess, who was also at that time going through a complaint process, the possible trial at the end of that, which didn't happen, thank God. But he invited me to his church, and this was the 7th anniversary of this church being reconciling. And we had a beautiful service, and I had the honor to preach. And afterwards we had a Q&A, and one older lady who had been Methodist all of her life stepped forward and actually came up to the front and said, Reverend Schaefer, I want you to know I am angry with my church, with the United Methodist Church, for defrocking you. What does that even mean? I am using this word as a cuss word now. And then she demonstrated and said, "What the fruck is going on in the United Methodist Church?" I'm telling you, that humor went a long way of healing. People like her made all the difference and had something to do with this Judicial Council decision today, because people made their voices heard. They wrote letters to bishops. They wrote letters to the Judicial Council, the Jurisdictional Council. They made a difference. They raised their voices. They talked to reporters. They talked to people in their community and said, "We are not like this. Yes, we're United Methodist, but we are reconciling, and in our place there is marriage equality, and there is nobody who will be rejected or harmed in our community." Those are the churches and individuals from within the United Methodist Church that have everything to do with this decision, and I want to thank them. Thank them so much for their support and for their courage. I believe there is a Q&A to follow this. I was only given 15-20 minutes, and I think I used that time up. And I know there's an important game going on, right, Father Mark?